Welcome back to another episode of the Tease podcast, where we talk all about branding, marketing, and content that converts. This week, we are diving into Taylor Swift's recent album launch, talking more about business systems and how to grow in a systematic, sustainable way, as well as some things that you can do to generate revenue from your referrals. Hi, my name is Joanna. I'm the co founder of Millennial Marketer, an agency that helps people create their own digital businesses.
And I'm Michelle Puolani, founder of To Be Honest Beverage Company. It's a non-alcoholic functional spirit brand, as well as business and consultant to personal brands and marketing strategy. Let's dive in.
Today, for my beverage, I still have my boring oat milk, brown sugar, iced latte thing that I make. I actually bought I bought a drink for today. It was, I'm not going to say, I'll give you a slight hint. It's like a canned boba beverage that I saw that looked really tasty that I wanted. And then I realized I don't have like the boba straws that will get the boba in them. And that just doesn't sound fun to me. So I need to go get some boba straws and get myself some ice. But I will be drinking my normal coffee today. It is half calf, so I can sleep this evening. But it's half calf, and I'm excited to sip and chat with you today.
Not having a boba straw is a really big deal, actually. I got boba for Jeremy night the other day. I forgot the straws, and it is a bit challenging.
No, it's not the same without the straws.
Yeah, it makes it very different. I had to dump out the liquid and then have the boba in another cup, and I immediately took a drink of liquid.
Like pop.
Trying to get some boba in my mouth. Yeah, pretty ridiculous. Today, it has been a rough couple of weeks for me. If you're listening, I understand how challenging things can be emotionally, mentally, especially with what's going on in the world. But I've been dealing with some health stuff. I'm back on medication for some things. And so that has just been like throwing me way out of whack. So today, I went for, even though it's early here, we film at 11 a.m. my time. What, 2 p.m. your time?
Yeah, it's like 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I went for a TBH beverage. So this is using my non-alcoholic functional spirit, which has CBD and no THC. So I have that. I have some blackberry concentrate, agave syrup, and soda water. So I'm having myself a morning cocktail on a Tuesday, and I'm okay with it.
Is this our first product placement, Michelle?
This is technically, yes. I didn't bring a bottle, so unfortunately I did not leverage that well enough. But yes.
This episode is proudly sponsored by
beverage companies.
We should really do that more often. If you're listening, Michelle and I have whole businesses and whole lives. It would be super fun if all we did with this was this podcast. Maybe someday we'll just be like full-time content creators. But we both have full-time businesses that we spend our lives in, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, one day, eventually, it'll just be like that easy. I tell Jeremy all the time about my visions for the future, my delusional visions of what I'm creating in our lives, even though sometimes my efforting does not match that. It's all in my head. But someday it'll be reality in terms of just the ease of being the vision person, being the strategy person, being the face, being the content creator, and not necessarily worrying about a lot of the back end stuff, which is still, part of that starting and founding a business. And so we're still in the very small stages of our brand, which is a non-alcoholic functional spirit. It replaces the liquor in your cocktail. And so I onboarded a social media person recently. We work with an ad agency, and I have consultants I have a graphic designer for our label design, and my husband does product manufacturing and everything else. And eventually, and hopefully soon, we'll be able to bring on sales and a digital team and all of that. But when you're starting small, you're bootstrapping. And my company is self-funded in that the money that we make funds the business, right? But it's not like we have a ton of capital being invested in a CPG brand, which is, when you're in physical products, it's totally different than digital space. Overhead and cost of goods and expenses is so much more upfront, unless you are the type of brand that does big drops. And I know that there are e-commerce brands and businesses who work that model, which would be awesome, but we're still really working on building the following around it. So in any case, I digress, but that is eventually where we will be at some point, instead of being these full-time, fully present, always on type business owners. But sometimes it's a process. I know some people maybe come into it more easily, And watching the digital space is tough, I think, sometimes because there's so much comparison and what feels like, oh, they're doing this. They had this. They were this successful with this. They don't work as much as me. And I've just found that everyone's on a different path and journey with it. And mine looks different. And I know that I probably put in more time, more energy than other people and don't make as much money as other people. But this is apparently my dharma and my situation to learn and to grow. So here we are.
One of the things that always gets me, Michelle, you mentioned like the expense of running a physical product business. One of the things people complain a lot about in the digital space is the cost of software subscriptions. So I run a lot of things on a tool called Kajabi, and Kajabi is your website. Kajabi can host your digital products. You can send emails. You can build funnels. Like there's so much you can do on the platform. And I pay just under $2,000 a year. I'm on a yearly subscription for it because I save a little bit and I'm not going to get rid of it anytime soon. But I spend just under like $2,000 a year. There are plans from like, this is not an ad for Kajabi, but there are plans from like $80 a month to, $200 a month. And then if you're a really large business and you have certain contacts, you might be spending something like $400 a month to get what you need. And a lot of people complain about that cost. And $200 a month for something to host your entire business is nothing. If you thought about that as like your rent for a physical location, like you would be spending way more than $200 a month on that. So I think sometimes there's just a weird perspective shift with digital products is it costs in some ways so little to and this happens to me too with like I'll be building someone's whole product and I'll send them a proposal and they'll be like, that's too much money. And I'm like, this is your whole like what if someone was creating like you think about what it went to create your formula, your bottle, your label, like the product. You spent a lot of money on that. Either your time for what you could do, or if you outsourced it money, but people think it's digital, it's nothing, right? It's an interesting like mindset shift I think digital creators need to have because I think sometimes they just don't want to spend the money.
I completely agreed. I think people totally misinterpret the starting of a business in the digital space and what that takes and unwillingness to pay, or they want to spend money. Like I will say, in my experience, I wish that I had spent less money on like coaches and courses and programs, and I had spent more money on people like you, agencies and supportive team members who can actually help me build the systems because I spent so much time learning landing pages and software and video editing and email marketing and like all of the stuff, and I'm grateful I have that skill set now, but I wish that I had spent way more time on the content creation side, building the community, building the audience, driving the traffic, and putting my skill set into that, being present, speaking on stages, starting a podcast sooner, like all of those things over like buying a course to learn how to do something technical that I didn't enjoy and that I didn't like. And that's something that's really been developing for me as I learn in business is really leaning into those zones of excellence and genius and your strengths, your talents, your interests, and what you're expressly good at versus trying to harness, encourage, make better weaknesses or things that you don't know, don't care about in order to quote unquote do the thing that you want to do. And I wish that I had found you and millennial way sooner in my process because I've spent, I don't know, I've never added it up completely, but let's just say over $40,000 for sure and likely more, probably closer to 60 on coaches, programs, courses, like trial and error, all of these things. I have paid people to build funnels, but not good ones and just shitty experiences when it came to hiring. And I can understand the trepidation that people have with hiring agencies. I've spent $10,000 on like a funnel build, everything from ad creation to opt-in page. I've done the videos, I've done the email marketing with them and just had like literal zero come out of it. And you're learning lessons. Like, that is part of the process, right? Like, we all have to go through that experience. I keep seeing it recently, but it's like you can only warn someone so much. They have to experience it, or like a dose of warning is worth nothing, or like a lot of warning compared to like a dose of experience is not comparable. And so sometimes we have to go through that on our own, but having a digital business, like the barrier to entry is so low. And even now, you don't even have to have a software program. You could literally run completely for free on Google Drive. You could run an entire business. Like, all you need is something to take money. And theoretically, you could charge people via Venmo because people are so comfortable with
Yeah.
it now. Like, when I was getting started in the digital space, people still weren't as used to spending money online and didn't trust necessarily the business that you were creating. But after COVID, everything has completely changed. People buy everything online, literally everything. And after running a physical product business, which minimum probably was about $30,000 for us, all in from the start, just to get the product launched and off the ground. So, yes, don't take it for granted that you're in the digital space and creating content and can sell people digital products that cost you, quote unquote, nothing, right?
Totally. Like there's just so many options and so many ways you can go about running your business and spending your money and spending your time. As a business owner, you really have to think about that. Like one of the things that I do, eh, I did not grow up with any money. I still don't really have a lot of money, but I really didn't grow up with any money. And the idea of paying someone to mow my lawn or paying someone to fix something in my home, like we did everything ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, I became a business owner, and I was actually a business owner and working full time at the same time. And getting our yard work done was this like major stressor in our lives because my child was really young at that point. So either me or my husband would have to do the yard work while the other one watched the child. And it felt like our whole weekend. And we live on like just under an acre. So there's a lot of space to take care of. We felt like we were just constantly doing yard work. And then I was working all week. And then either I was watching the child all weekend, or my husband was doing the yard work, or I was doing the yard work, and it was a lot. And one day I was just like, it was like happenstance. We were going on a vacation and we didn't have time to like mow the lawn before the vacation. It was going to get too long and it was going to cause problems. So I was like, let's just get someone to do it this one time. And I paid for it. And I was like, oh, it was less than $100. And I was like, do you know what in that, and he has all the equipment, so it's much faster. But in that 4 hours that I was spending on the weekend, I could pay $100 and I could do something way better with those 4 hours. And for me on the weekend, it was recharging and spending time with my family that got me ready to work for the week. And it just made sense. And if you didn't grow up with money, it's like a different mindset to money, that like spending that is going to let me do this, which I will get a return on. But like I don't do most things. If something's broken, I call someone to fix it. I don't try to figure it out myself unless it's super super easy, because it would take me a whole day and brain power to figure out how to fix my toilet. Or I can spend $200 and someone can do it. And for me, that makes, at this stage in my life, it just makes more sense.
I think it makes sense in our businesses and not in our businesses, like really truthfully. And if you were making enough money to be able to justify, like, oh, how long is it going to take me to do this? How much money theoretically do I make per hour doing these other things? Or, like you said, how can I leverage that time to better support my health, my well-being, my state of mind, so that I'm even better when I get back into my business, when I go back into my work, when I create content? And especially in our businesses as solo, quote unquote, solopreneurs, which, as I'm more in business, like I don't like that term a lot, because I think it puts too much pressure on the individual to perform in all of these different roles. And I think we see that and see these people running their businesses and think like, oh, I have to do it all myself too. And I will say, and this is something that I wish someone had pointed out to me early on in my digital business, is that some people are equipped with very different strengths than you. And when you look at something like StrengthsFinder, which we've talked about on this podcast plenty, go back and listen to those episodes, because if you haven't done your assessment to figure out your core strengths, it's super powerful and very helpful to see, oh, why am I hitting my head against a wall to try to do this thing that I don't even enjoy or that I feel like I have to do? And there are some people who are more broad in their categories, right? Where so they have strategic thinking and they have execution and they have relationship building and they have whatever the last one is, which is influence. And so they're more broad in the actual actions and ways that they can show up in their business. And if we ourselves are more narrow, say I predominate in strategic thinking, 4 of my top 5 strengths are strategic thinking. And guess what? Execution isn't really anywhere on the board. And so when it comes to those executive tasks within my business, it's really, really hard for me to execute on it. I'm going to push through and I'm going to try to do it if it has to get done. But at the same time, I need to start trying to find support and find the people who can do those things. And I know that not like trying to find the person can always be really tough from a hiring perspective. I've spent a lot of time either interviewing or looking at consultants' work or like trying to find the right fit. I've brought on people before who aren't the right fit. And so I know that can be daunting as well. But I'm trying to put out into the world right now, like I want my COO, like I want my right-hand person. I want someone who's going to get in, take charge, just like execute, do the things, keep the momentum moving forward so that I can be much more free flowing in my vision and presence and strategy and like keep the bigger picture in mind of where we're headed, but let someone else focus on the details. Cause it's just like, I think it's just hurting me and it's hurting my business in the long run.
Yeah, it's so important to like, as you can, and you might not be there. You might not be 100% there on day one, and you probably won't be. But as much time as you can spend operating in your strengths and your zone of genius and let other people take care of the other things, that's something that I think is so important so you can be strong. Now, on a complete change of topic, I want to ask you, Michelle, so you are not as chronically online as I am and keep up with all of the things. You're very good and you don't scroll social media. But I have to know if you've heard yet about Taylor Swift's announcement that she made yesterday
You
or
know,
this morning, I guess.
I saw something very briefly. You'll have to fill me in because you're right. I have been trying to really like part of my work and productivity and content creation has been centered around output, right? And so I was finding that I was consuming more content that I would like. Like if you actually looked, I kind of did this recently. If you actually looked at my average weekly time spent on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, etc., it wasn't actually as much as I thought. So that was actually a positive thing because I thought I was literally doom scrolling for hours. So thankfully, that wasn't the case. It was just more in my head. But the impact of social media in terms of consumption was really affecting the my comparison, how I wanted to be compared to other people. And so I'm like, okay, I need to tap back into myself. I need to get back into my true, authentic voice. What do I want to bring to the world? And how am I going to do that? And so in order to do that, I have to limit my consumption. So I will say that my feed is very specifically like more so, if anything, the summer I turned pretty content.
I really have to watch that show.
I can't help it. I'm so grateful. I told Jeremy 1 episode, 1 show at a time, once a week, and that is it. That's all I get on a weekly basis because I am like a black and white person. I have a slightly addictive personality. It's one of the reasons I don't drink or do other drugs because I'm kind of black or white. Like I'm all in or I'm a no-go. And so with almost everything, I have to have some boundaries or limitations or like hard lines that I put on myself. So these are the hard lines. So I'm consuming less and trying to be better about that. But I did see something about an era.
Yes. So she announced yesterday. We do not know all of the details. I keep saying yesterday. It was at like 12 p.m. Eastern time. That she's launching a new album. So the new album is available for pre-sale. Says it will ship around October 19th, but we actually don't know the release date of the album. But the reason that I'm bringing it up for us today is because Taylor Swift, whether you like her music or not, if you're interested in her or not, she is a fantastic marketer. She just is such a great marketer. And I want to talk through a little bit so far of what her launch for this album has looked like, because it's so brilliant and it's ongoing and it just gets people talking. So yesterday, Taylor Nation, which is the account, like her fan account, it's like her official fan accounts, they posted a scrolling image of orange outfits that Taylor Swift wore on tour on the Eras tour, and said, "We can't forget." The caption was something like, "We can't forget about when she said, 'See you in the next era.'" Right? So they posted this one little post, and the internet went wild. They're like, she's going to announce something. She's going to announce something. Something's happening. Guys, the next album is coming. It's August 12th. It's the 12th album. And then people are looking at all of her posts and her things, and everyone's talking about on the internet. Then her website puts a countdown up. Her entire website's gone. All you have is a countdown with this like orange glitter imagery. And there's a countdown to August 12th at 12. It was 12:12. Yeah, 12:12 a.m. Eastern time. Countdown. More people talking, people live streaming the count. Like, it was nuts. And I was up. I normally am not up that late. But Mondays, my husband plays volleyball, and me and my daughter do like a little sleepover thing, and like I let her stay up too late, and I let her stay up till like it was like 15 minutes. My husband was going to be home. There was no point in going to bed. So we were just like all up anyway. So I just kind of like watched this unfold. But the countdown goes up and everybody's posting online and everybody is guessing, and it's this whole thing, right? And then at that time, she announces the pre-sale for her album. And then while all of that's happening, the New Heights podcast, which is her boyfriend Travis Kelce's podcast, says, "We have a surprise guest coming on Wednesday." And it's him and his brother and like the outline of a woman. And everyone's like, "That's Taylor Swift." And then they're like seeing, "Look, it's this picture." Everyone's like analyzing, right? And she actually announced the album from a clip from tomorrow's episode of the podcast. And it was like a collab post between the podcast and her. So it was just this watching what happened in about 12 hours, the buzz, the discussion. And we still don't know, like they have the all of the marketing of it has the cover of the album is blurred out. So this album is selling right now on pre-order. We don't know the cover art. We don't know the track list. We don't know a single song. Don't know what it's. We know nothing, and
Yeah.
it is selling. And then Wednesday. So now everyone's going to be talking about this album till that podcast episode comes out tomorrow. We film on Tuesdays. When you listen to this podcast on Thursday, it will have been yesterday. That was really meta, but that's what's happening. People are going to be talking from now until that podcast. That podcast is going to happen. She's 100% going to drip more information, right? Like maybe we'll see the cover. Maybe we'll know the track list. Like she's going to drip something. Maybe she'll tell us the launch date. We don't know. And then from now until knowing and watching other Taylor Swift's launches, from now until that album comes out, there's a plan. There's going to be little pieces dripped. So it's in constant conversation. And then in typical Taylor Swift fashion, probably after it releases, maybe there'll be a surprise double album or triple album or something else coming after that album launch, because that's what she does. She creates these just like amazing cultural moments through marketing, through branding, and through interaction with her fans. And as a marketer, it's really fascinating to watch.
It's so fun. And how much can you learn from this experience? Like, how cool is it to be able to watch this from the outside and say, ooh. And looking at other people's launches in the digital space, if you're talking personal brand, digital products, your own content, these are Easter eggs. These are drip fed content. These are surprise and delight. This is a part of the marketing process that engages your community, that draws people in and gets them excited for what you are selling without any information, right? Like you said, you don't know what the songs are. You don't know what the title is going to be like. You know, obviously that they are songs, but ultimately you have no idea. But people are so invested in her brand, in her past, that they don't need any of that information in order to be so excited about this next thing. How long are her launches typically? Do you know?
So they really vary. I someone said, and this is the discourse that happens online, someone feels like she's going to launch before August 30th because August 30th, I guess, is the cutoff date. It is like the cutoff date before for Grammy nominations. So your album has to come out before August 30th to get nominated for the next year's Grammy Awards.
Hmm.
So she could be trying to launch before then. We really have no idea. So she's like surprise dropped albums before. She's waited like months. It really is all over the place, which I think is part of the fun because everybody's going to be kind of guessing like what happens next. What is now the conversation is who is she going to have guests? Let's look and find the Easter eggs that tell us the date of the launch. Is it a single album, double album, triple? What's happening, right? Um so we'll see. I'm really not sure. It could like it could be early. It has to be before August. Sorry, it has to be before now I'm doing it. I'm doing the Easter egging. It has to be before October 13th because that's when the vinyls are going to ship. So
Mm.
if the vinyls are shipping, like it has to already be on Spotify, but it could be much later because vinyls take a long time to produce. They take like a long time to actually like because it's physical, like be created. So it's
Hmm.
sometime between it could be tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? At the podcast, but sometime between tomorrow and October 13th, I think we're looking at.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, Taylor Swift, as we've talked about on this podcast, she's a freaking genius. And like, love or hate her music, it doesn't matter. Like, what she's been able to do in creating what I feel like is one of the most ultimate personal brands is phenomenal. And she's smart and she's thoughtful and she cares. She's compassionate with the people who are engaged with her music. And she demonstrates that through all of these little teasing incidences. Like I see things and I like Taylor Swift's music, but I'm not like a huge fan. I'm not really honestly a fan of much. And so I don't get into like those kinds of details, but I see people online talk about like, oh, well, this song said this, and then this song, and they put all of these things together and that intertwine, and it's true. And it's kind of cool because it's a reflection of Taylor and her life, right? You have this human being who's going through this experience, and she's expressing that through her lyrics and through her gift of song and music. And it's not going to be one dimensional. It is going to have a lot of different sides and it is going to have a lot of stories. And she uses storytelling in her music to connect with people and people relate to those experiences. And it's such a great example of how you can intertwine those things into what you do, right? Like, I don't know everything about Taylor's life. I don't know all of the details. I don't know everything that she does on a daily basis. I don't know all of her relationships. I don't know her family. I don't know all these things. Granted, I know some of that is more public than probably she would like, considering her fame and celebrity status, but I don't have to know everything about her in order to appreciate the interwoven and interlocking stories that she creates and the music that she creates, and therefore the products that she's able to sell and market. Because why do people buy t-shirts? Why do people buy albums? Why do people buy other types of merch? Why do people go to her concerts? Why do people tune in and tap into what she's doing? Is because they're invested in her story. They're invested in her gift that she's kind of giving to the world. And by, domino effect, things get purchased. And she's created this over $1 billion empire at this point of what it is that she brings to the world. And if you looked at it at the base nature of what she does, you're looking at someone who's sitting on the street singing and playing their guitar for free or trying to get change, right? Like there's a very base breakdown of what it is that she brings to the world could be simultaneously seen as not valued, not very good, and doesn't matter. But she's been able to create all of these things around it. And so when you're thinking about your own products, your own programs, your own offers, and what you bring to the world, at the base, they could be very simple. They could be something that you feel like isn't worth what you're charging for it or whatever the case is. But truthfully, the value and the perception is in the eye of the beholder and what you're able to create in that experience. And so when you're able to demonstrate that, when you're able to market it, when you're able to understand it and engage your community by demonstrating it, there's so much power in that. And that's where your business comes from. And that's where your success ultimately will follow.
Yeah, one of the really, I think, interesting things about what Taylor Swift has done with her career from a business perspective is there was this time, I don't know the exact time period, but there was this time in the music industry where artists were really struggling to make money. So streaming platforms took over, people stopped buying albums, and they were literally not making money on their music because streaming platforms weren't paying them enough and people weren't buying the physical copies. So the cost it took to produce that like wasn't matching up. And the only way to make money was to tour. And then tours are extremely expensive. And so it was actually really not to say like boo hoo, you're famous and you can't make money, but making money as a music artist after streaming platforms took over was really a challenge. Like this was a problem. People were canceling tours because they couldn't sell enough tickets and their business was going to go bankrupt. And Taylor Swift's launch model created demand for things like merchandise, like albums because it's a special cover with a special song, like vinyl records. And I'm sure other people did this too, but when you look at her marketing strategy and then you look at some of like the her predecessors, is that might be the right word, like looking at like Chapel Roan and Sabrina Carpenter and Olivia Rodrigo as examples, they're using a lot of her strategies in what she does. So she could have said, she made a lot of money, she could have said fuck it, like this isn't worth it anymore, people aren't buying albums, they're not streaming, I'm just gonna be done, right? Because and I think this is what some business owners do, I'm just gonna be done. But instead she said, no, let me figure out how to make people buy the physical copies. Let me figure out how to make people buy a special edition vinyl. Make me figure out how to get someone to buy 5 different versions of the same album. And some people look at this and think, oh, it's like capitalist greed. But she went from a phase in music where artists were struggling to make money to basically creating a blueprint for other people to make money. And I think sometimes for us as business owners, we put an offer into the world and we're like, no one wants to buy it. Woe is me. I just like give up. But like, it's our job to like use our creativity, create that demand. If I've created a product and it's not selling, how can I repackage it or reposition it or do something to make that demand happen? And that's something like the people who come out on top and like end up being successful, I think some of it's luck. With Taylor Swift, I don't think it was luck, but with some of these people that are successful, it's luck, and with others, it's like they were they were trailblazers. They came up with new strategies. When something wasn't working, they made something better or they did something different or they made a change. And I think she's kind of created like a marketing blueprint for some of these newer artists that you can tell they're taking notes from what she's doing, and not copying her, right? But like realizing, okay, this is a great model to follow.
And it's one of those things in the digital space you hear all the time from gurus and other people. The webinar is dead. Instagram isn't working. Don't do this. This is fault. Like there's so much rhetoric in the online space, and I get it because that's what gets organic reach, right? If you say something in exact terms, this is final, this is the secret, this is the only thing, this is the number one thing, people pay attention. And I get the reason that has become popular, but it's also really, really, I think, hurt a lot of people because they're looking at that and they're taking it in. And even if it's a subconscious thing, is you're seeing it and saying like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't do a webinar or maybe I shouldn't do this because they know better or they're telling me this, or It seems like they're really strong in what they're saying, but that is all to get attention. It is all just to get views and shares and people buying into their stuff, truthfully.
Yeah.
But knowing that you can take something like vinyl, like albums, like records that we don't need anymore and make them coveted and turn them into something that is usable and is workable. So it's not necessarily the process, it's not necessarily the medium that's the issue. It's the way in which it's being marketed and sold. And that is such an important thing to distinguish. Same thing about your products and programs. Usually, it's not a product issue, it's not a program issue if you're not even getting people into it. If you get people into your products and programs and then they're having issues or you're getting lots of refund requests, of course, we have a different issue we need to solve. But if you're not even selling, that's a marketing issue. That's a messaging issue. That's a positioning issue. It might be the core of your offer and how you're saying it. It might just be the content that you're creating. It might be the way that you're speaking to people. Like there's a lot of different things across the board, but realizing it's typically the marketing, it's the positioning, it's not the actual product, program, service if you're not getting anyone into it enough to give you that feedback. And so such a great example. I love looking at these things to better understand how we can do that. And you're right, it is about taking ownership. It is about saying, I'm the one creating this business. We're not in an era of build it and then they will come. We're in an era of finding niche problems and solving them, creating engaged, polarized communities that people want to be a part of or don't want to be a part of, and that's okay. But we're in a world of so much globalization and population that we can tap into such a small, very small segment of the market and still be incredibly successful in the business if we are meeting the needs and catering to our people the way that they want to be catered to and finding that thing that they want to invest in. And it is our responsibility, not just to say, oh, I made this offer, it's so amazing. Like people have to buy it. It's like, no, you have to do the work to get people to buy it. No one's just going to do your business a favor by buying your stuff.
So I'm reading this book right now. It's called Contagious. I can't
Oh my God, I
cut
love
the author. You
Contagious.
love Contagious?
It's
So I'm
one of
not
my favorite books. I refer to it a
I
lot.
I love it so far. I am not done. So I'm not actually ready to talk about the principles of being contagious, but basically what this book is about is really talking about like why some things catch on and others don't and looking at the science behind it. So the author is a professor and has done a lot of like real research and real studies on like trying to figure out why something takes off and why something doesn't. And is going through these principles. So I think in a future episode, and I'm glad you've read it, once I finish the book in a future episode, we will talk about it. So make sure you subscribe and like follow us and keep in touch because we'll be talking about this book in a future episode and kind of outlining like what it is that gets certain things to catch on while other things don't. But one of the really interesting things that was mentioned early in the book, because I think I'm on like chapter 2 or 3 right now. One of the things that really stuck with me that was early on in the book was just talking about the importance of word of mouth and how important that was. And then talking about the fact that, and this statistic shocked me, was that only 7% of word of mouth like recommendations happen on social media. So we focus so much, and I'm not saying you shouldn't focus on social media. Social media is important. We focus so much on social media and making content and doing that when word of mouth is a huge reason people make buying decisions. But we don't focus as much on, at least I don't, on my current customer base getting referrals and generating word of mouth from them. I definitely focus more on social, on ads, on email than I do about how to get my people talking. So if you think about this Taylor Swift thing, my business partner, his girlfriend's a Taylor Swift fan. Her and I were chatting about it all night. This morning in my conversation with Brandon, my business partner, he was like, "So what do you think about the album?" Right? Like we are having personal one-on-one conversations about the album. They created conversation that makes us talk. And so sometimes we're like, "Got to get that content out. Got to post that content. That's going to be the thing that gets me sales." When reality, you have a network, you have customers, you have people in your sphere. What can you do to get them to talk about you to another person one on one? And then also think about how you could scale that through social media content, right? But that was something that really got me thinking, because I think sometimes we spin our wheels because we're not going viral, or we're not, doing that, when really the bulk of that word of mouth is happening one to one. And then how can you bake, like I'm working on building like a membership and things like that. How can I bake that word of mouth happening in my product, right? Like, how can I get people to talk about it naturally, right? So I'm thinking through those things, because those conversations can be so powerful. So if you're like so frustrated, if you have a business and you have customers and you have clients and you're struggling to grow on social media and using social media to get sales, I'm not saying to stop, keep doing social media, but you might be able to scale more effectively, even faster, by utilizing your network and utilizing your customers and figuring out how to get them to talk about you.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways that I feel like I've worked with clients in the past from a brick and mortar perspective or from a digital perspective of how you try to get customers talking about you and sharing you. There are very direct ways, right? Where you can ask people directly, do you know three to five people who would be interested in this type of thing? Can you refer me? You can be very specific about the type of person that you're looking for and what that looks like. I mean, I know businesses that work completely off of referral. And actually, the higher you get up, so there's a difference in business model, right? For high volume, lower cost, and then higher cost, lower volume typically. You don't usually have both where it's high cost and super high volume, because there's a certain level of quality that has to shift. But it's often found, I'm reading this and had maybe I finished it. I actually don't know. I'm the kind of person that has like 6 things going all at the same time, so it's not healthy. Let's just say that. So anyway, the 10 20 rule, or it's 10x is easier than 2x. That's the book title, I believe. But the idea is like the 80-20 concept in principle is that 80% of your results are going to be produced by 20% of your effort. So if you have a client service-based business, right, typically 80% of your profit and revenue will come from 20% of your client base. So if you focus on getting more high quality clients, then you're not spread so thin, because a lot of times your lower cost customers are going to be your highest demanding customers. I don't know why or how that works. There's got to be science
It's
around it
like
somewhere, but it's so
totally
true.
true.
It's totally
Like,
true.
without giving you real data from real people, my highest paying client is the least amount of work.
Yep.
100%.
I think
And
that
when
yeah.
someone says, "Can you just fix this one little thing? It's gonna cost it won't take you any time." That will take you a lot of time. Like, it's 100% true.
Yeah, and the people who don't wanna spend as much money, they're more finicky, more nitpicky, they're looking at over all the details. A lot of times when you're operating at a higher level, when you have more of a budget, you're not micromanaging, you are trusting the right people to do the right things. Now, that doesn't mean there is an oversight, but in any case, back to the 10x is easier than 2x. So the concept behind that book and the principle is that you're putting all this time and energy into like 1.5, into 2x, into like, oh, how can we get marginally better? How can we do this a little bit better? When it's like, if you stopped and take a step back and said, okay, how can I leverage? So instead of 2x, how can I do 10x? So for example, in my physical product business, we have restaurant partners that we work with. Now, I sell to these restaurant partners as wholesale. They move through our products, they purchase from us. And we're at a very small town. And so a lot of our businesses here are locally owned and operated, right? They have just small business owners. Cool. I can get another small business to work with us. Or if I was in this place, which I'm not yet, or I could go to something like a chain, or I could go to a Marriott, or I could go to a hotel that has multiple locations, or even a restaurant group. So say a restaurant group has 15 locations instead of just one. Ultimately, if I'm selling to the client in the same way and secure that sale, it could mean 15 locations that bring on our product as opposed to just one location. So that idea and that concept can be put into places in so many different aspects of your business, right? How can you leverage? How can you invest the same time, the same effort, the same energy that gets 10x the results versus just that 2x? I actually don't know why we started this conversation, but I think it's something I feel very strongly about. I'm totally got distracted.
I know why, because I mean we were talking about leveraging what you have, right? Like and how the people in your network can be the key
Yes,
to that growth.
referrals.
And it came
Referrals.
from referrals.
Oh, yes.
And what's so tough about that concept, Michelle, from like a business perspective is your exact situation, right? You could go after another small business or you could go after Marriott, right? The small business one is going to get you cash faster than the Marriott one. So if you need cash, if you need sales, going after 100 small businesses and getting 10 is faster than going after Marriott and closing thousands, right? Because that's a longer sale. There are more people to approve. More people have to buy in. You're going to have multiple meetings. You're probably going to have to do some cost, like you're going to have to do more work for that sale. It's going to be a longer process before you get that deal. So what's tough about that from a business perspective, if you're bootstrapping, which both of us have bootstrapped our businesses, and bootstrapping means not taking like investment, right? We are taking the money we make from our business, investing it back into the business to make the business grow. Cash flow is important because you want to be able to like pay your bills and pay your team and pay your people. So actually the scaling problem that I'm facing in my business is this balance between we have these big ideas that could make us a lot of money, but they're going to take longer than, okay, I just need to get 5 more clients this month. But then those 5 more clients this month take up the work to do that thing, right? So it's this really, and I don't have an answer to this problem because like I am sitting in it. Like I am sitting in it right now of like I need to get the clients and get the client work to keep the cash flow going, but then I have these big ideas I want to get done to do it. And well, my answer right now and what I'm working on is really boiling down my big ideas to the MVP level of like what is the least amount of work I can do to get it to launch, because I know once it's launched and people are there and it's making some money that I'll be able to invest more time. So for me actually that is the solution, right? Like how do I do the lowest level to get that big idea? Now, the big idea might take 3 years to build out, but if I can get it started on a low scale, I can grow it that way. The other option would be to look for investment, right? And to say like, hey, I've got this big idea, but and now I have enough data that I could say, I need this much money for 6 months so I can build this thing and actually have the data and could prove it and could probably get that investment. Like I could probably do that. I don't really want to. I don't want to answer to investors. But that is the problem, especially for digital. I think for both, like small business owners, when you're in that stage, how do you get from small business owner to empire? Right? Like, how do you cross that bridge? And that's tough. It's hard to figure out.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're sitting right now too, is I could easily go out myself and continue to make one-to-one sales. And I could easily do these other like levers in our business, right? That would increase our sales and get us to a different point. But it is challenging to think about like, okay, what's the operational delivery aspect of that? And how do we manage those kinds of things as we evolve and as we grow? If I want to be a nationally distributed product, where do we start? We can't grow too quickly, right? Because that would put you out of business just as quick as not growing fast enough. And there's all these other things to kind of consider. So as we start to wrap up the conversation, I think that ultimately what Taylor Swift has done as our like core example from this conversation is powerful because she gets people interested. If you haven't read the book yet, read Contagious. And if you haven't subscribed to the Substack, go ahead and do that in the show notes below, because what we do after every episode is we send out very specific, detailed, more actionable takeaways from this conversation. Whereas Joanne and I take this time to chat, catch up, on weekly updates and what we're seeing in the industry in business and marketing. But that will really give you some tools and some tactics to say, okay, now I can apply this practice in my business. They're always simple, they're always digestible, and they give you something you can do right away as opposed to thinking, oh, I need 6 months to implement this, or this process is going to take me this long, which is a lot of content out there. So hit that subscribe, join the Substack. But I think from a marketing perspective, takeaways really for me are to create more surprise and delight. Like, we're in an age and an era of people have seen a lot of things. People are exposed to so much noise. So the more that you can intrigue people, the more that you can engage people, the more that you can have those direct conversations, encourage word of mouth, and lean into the referral aspect of your business by creating something unique and interesting, or by delivering such great customer service that people can't help but talk about it. Like, there are so many ways that you can do this in a natural, organic way for your business. So start to think about that and start to think about the human experience that you're providing for your customers, because as we move more heavily into AI, this is the time to like double down on human quality and on yourself and on how you are showing up in your business and in your marketing. So we'll see you next time on the Click Tease podcast.